can see my screen. If anybody could confirm that you can see my screen and you can hear me properly. I have recorded the session, and we'll do the same thing we did last week. We will share the recorded session together with the supporting documentation. Okay, after this session, and there will be also a practical exercise following this WebEx session. Okay, so last week we discussed about the overview of the write-off process, and there were some questions both during the kickoff BTC and also during the first WebEx session, and we were collecting the different questions thanks to my colleague Saida, who is taking care of all your comments and questions during the session. So in order to improve the gathering of the different questions, so please, if you could, make use of the Q&A functionality available in WebEx, okay, because that will help us gathering all the different questions. And you should have seen that we collected the different questions. We discussed the Q&A with HQ, okay, with the property management unit in New York, and we are somehow trying to provide written answers to all your questions and concerns, and that's why we shared a Q&A document that we will also keep that document updated with the comments and questions we will receive today and also during last WebEx session scheduled for this Thursday. Okay, so we sent out the Q&A document together with two supporting documents. One supporting document related to the realignment of the property management functions in the field niches that relates to the question we received during the kickoff BTC regarding the role and the responsibilities of the PSB unit in the mission. Okay, so we also provided a written answer to that question, and that fax and that supporting document supports that answer. Okay, and the second document we shared is the implementation of the delegation of authority for property management, and we will be talking about that delegation of authority during today's session. So today's session is going to be mainly dedicated to the delegation of authority and how, based on the depreciated value of the items that we want to write off, that will derive the write-off category, and also how we group the different items into different notifications. All right. Also, following the kickoff BTC, we are scheduling another BTC for next week, hopefully Monday, 10th, to have an open session for more questions and answers. Okay, so we understand that the WebEx is not the best channel to address open questions or to discuss about the process and to discuss about the main issues that missions are facing. So we want to schedule a BTC for next Monday, where we can go through the main Q&A, okay, written in the document, and also if missions want to share additional issues or additional concerns regarding the write-off process, that will be the best session to do so. Okay, so without any other delay, let's start the session with reviewing main topics or main lessons learned from last session, and also based on the some feedback we want to provide to you regarding the practical exercise you have been sending to us. So, based on your on the solution you provided to the exercise, what we want to reinforce is the following. Okay, so we want to reinforce on the importance of checking for existing notifications. Okay, so most of you have done it correctly. So in your exercise, we were asking you to initiate the write-off for two different equipment items. Okay, one of each was already part of another notification, and we wanted you to check that only one of the equipment was not already processed in a different notification. So that's an important step, and wherever you or whenever you need to initiate a write-off case, you need to make sure that that equipment item has not been included in a different notification. Okay, so in order to avoid duplicate creation of the write-off notifications, there are two different reports in the system that can help you doing that. So the first report available is IH08, and that will list you the different equipment records. And remember that in the inventory number field is where you should be looking for the notification number. Okay, and also based on some feedback from a participant from last session, you should be, even if you see there in the inventory number a notification number, it doesn't mean that the equipment is being written off. It could be a different notification type. For example, it could be a notification related to equipment assignment. So if you see the notification number there in the inventory number field, you should be checking the type of notification. So only if the notification type is PW, that notification will relate to a write-off notification. Okay. So if you want to initiate the write-off case for an equipment, IH08 T code will help you to first understand if the equipment was already included in a different notification. You also have report IW59 that you can use to report on existing notifications based on different settings. For example, based on notification type, planning plant, planner group, or even by date. Okay. So, for example, if you are trying to initiate the write-off for expendables, expendables will never have an equipment master record, right? So you will only rely on the IW59 to check for existing notifications. So expendables will never have an equipment master record, and therefore you cannot check for existing notifications by using the IH08. So for expendables, you will have to rely on the IW59 T code. Okay. What else do we want to reinforce from last session? Usage of notification template. Remember that there is a notification template available for all DFS missions, and here you have the notification template in production, right? Is the 121.445, and it's meant to standardize the different task list, right? To standardize the different tasks that have to be performed in most of the write-off cases. Remember that as a disposal planner, you can adjust the different tasks depending on the item, and you can include new tasks or even remove the task that will not be performed in that write-off case. For example, in the exercise, we were asking you to remove the recognition of the fixed asset because the item was not a fixed asset. So notification template will provide you with the standard list of tasks that you can adjust accordingly. Write-off category. It's very important for reporting purposes, right? And that we will discuss about this during today's session, and has to do with the delegation of authority for property management, and has to do with the value, mainly has to do with the value of the items that we want to write off. And remember that there were three different options here. So the designated authority, the LPSB, or the HPSB. That's a very important field. You have to make sure you select properly according to the depreciated value of the items. And we will discuss about this today. And then the linkage between the notification and the equipment is something that is done manually, right, by the notification user or the disposal planner, and also the equipment master data maintainer. Okay, it's done in both sides. So in the notification, you have to include the link to the equipment, and in the equipment, you have to include the link to the notification. Okay, we've seen that most of you have done correctly the part of adding the notification number in the equipment, but not that well to include the equipment number in the notification. Remember that the notification document has to be amended to include the link to the equipment or to the different equipment items that you want to include in the right of case. So in the notification document, if there is only one equipment item that needs to be included, you will use the specific equipment field. So if only one equipment has to be added in the notification, you can use the equipment field where you can type in the equipment number. If we are talking about more than one equipment items, then you will not use the equipment field, and you will add as an attachment the list of different equipment items you want to include in that notification. Okay. So in the example we sent to you as an exercise, you were meant to create a notification only for one equipment because the other one was already in process, and we have detected that some of you were adding the equipment number as in the notes instead of in the equipment field or as an attachment. So please use the equipment number if you are only including one equipment in that notification. So for example, if you are writing off a fixed asset, the equipment number that relates to that fixed asset should always be in the equipment field. Because remember that for fixed assets, you should always raise one notification for each fixed asset. You cannot include several fixed assets in the same notification document. All right. What else? In the equipment master record, you will need to include the reference to the notification, and for that purpose, you will use the inventory number field. So in the inventory number field of the equipment master record, you will need to indicate the notification number, and we've seen that most of you have done this step properly. The equipment should be uninstalled, right, and unassigned. Remove the parent assignment, and we've seen that this step was also clear for most of you. And there was a question also regarding the staff involvement that we addressed through the Q&A. So even if the staff member is involved in the right of case, you can still remove the parent assignment from the equipment master record and indicate that staff involvement in the notification document. Okay, but the equipment should be uninstalled and remove the parent assignment. And then the equipment status is used throughout the process for different purposes. So while the write-off is in process, we, as an equipment master data maintainer, we change the equipment status to write-off in process, right? So there is status to indicate that the equipment is being written off, and then after the write-off has been approved, so after the write-off case approval, in the equipment master record as a user status, you will be able to see the disposal method. Okay, this was also done correctly by most of you. Then the last steps were missing for some of you, like for example, to deactivate the equipment after the notification has been completed, and also the completion of all the tasks and the completion of the notification was also pending for some of you. So remember to complete the notification and to deactivate the equipment after all the write-off process has been completed. Okay. So that's what we wanted to emphasize from yesterday's session. And also, if you have questions or comments, feel free also to use the Q&A. Let me have a look. Okay. All right. So I hope that both Cass and Kirill are online, and I don't know if you are able to intervene. So I hope that you are not unmuted. Okay.
Yeah, we're here standing by.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Cass. So let's move ahead. And as mentioned before, main topic for today's session, it's about the delegation of authority and how that will impact the grouping of different equipment item or different items into the notification, and also how to select the write-off case into the notification. Okay. So as we said, the DOA, that will have an impact on selecting the write-off category for approval purposes, right? The designated authority, LPSB or HPSB, that will be all based on the DOA. And also that will impact how we group different equipment items into the same notification. So based on the write-off category, we will have to group the different equipment items accordingly. Remember that a fixed asset should always be in unique notification, so each notification should only contain one fixed asset, but for equipment items, you can include several of them into one notification, but all based on the delegation of authority thresholds. Okay. So everything, it's based, so the classification of write-off cases, main concept here is the financial threshold. So basically, everything is driven by the depreciated value. Okay. And basically, there are two different thresholds. So we have, in case the disposal method is normal, we will talk more about this later on. Basically, everything is driven by the depreciated value. And later on in the session, we will show to you how we are going to calculate what it shows here as depreciated value. And that will be different depending on the type of item, depending if we are talking about fixed assets, non-fixed assets, or even expendables. So if the item we want to write off, the depreciated value is 3,000 or less, that will be categorized as designated authority, or the same thing as DMS, CMS, or PMO. That it's related to the designated authority write-off category. If the depreciated value of the item we want to write off is above 3,000 but below 25,000, that will have to be reviewed and approved by the local property survey board. Okay. If the depreciated value of the item is above 25,000, that will go to the HPSB. Okay, that's for normal disposal method. Okay, and what do we mean by the disposal method being normal? So the only difference will be for disposal methods being gift or sale at a nominal price. This is what we call in DOA, in the delegation of authority, exceptional disposal methods, where we give or we sell the item at a nominal price. So the only difference will be that even though if the disposal method is the exceptional one, even though the depreciated value is under 3,000, the write-off case will still need to be reviewed by the local property survey board. Okay. Always, if the item, the depreciated value, is above 25,000, the headquarters property survey board is always involved. All right. So everything is driven by the financial thresholds, as long as the disposal method is not one of the exceptional ones. Okay. All right. So based on these financial thresholds, we will need to understand. So the key point here is how we are going to calculate the depreciated value for each item, and this is what we are going to show to you in the next slides. Okay, and the idea will be also to show to you how to do that in the system. Okay. Yeah. So Charbel is asking about the if the classification. You can also see that in the chat. All right. So my colleague Saida, it's kind of bumping all the questions back to all the different participants so that you can also see the question asked by your colleagues. Okay. So you can also see the question asked from Charbel about if the classification is the same for equipment and for fixed asset. Okay, so this classification applies to all the different materials. What is different between fixed asset, equipment, and spendables is the way we are going to calculate the depreciated value. So the way we calculate the depreciated value will differ if we are talking about fixed assets, if we are talking about non-fixed asset equipment, or if we are talking about spendables. But the classification in order to specify the write-off case and the different thresholds is the same no matter if we are talking about fixed asset, non-fixed asset equipment, or spendables. Okay, Charbel? All right. So let's see how we are going to calculate, because calculating the depreciated value is going to be the key point here in order to classify the write-off case. So in order to classify the write-off case, we need to calculate the depreciated value. And that's the main difference when we are talking about fixed asset, expendables, or other equipment. The depreciated value is established when the write-off action is initiated, and depending on the type of item, the calculation will differ. So for fixed asset, the depreciated value is driven by the fixed asset module. So that's the main purpose of the fixed asset module in Umoja, to help accounting to calculate the depreciation every month, and the depreciation it's even posted in our financial books. So we will show to you how in the system we can calculate the depreciated value for a fixed asset item. Okay, so for fixed asset, the depreciated value in Umoja is calculated based on IPSAS framework, and it's using straight line depreciation, right? So every month the fixed asset gets depreciated fixed value. Okay, so all the months we are depreciating the fixed asset the same amount until the estimated useful life of the fixed asset, at which point the fixed asset will have zero value in the books, and therefore the depreciated value for the fixed asset will, after the estimated useful life, will become zero. So in here we are talking about fixed asset. Okay. For non-fixed asset equipment, okay, we don't have the depreciated values automatically calculated in the system in Umoja. If I'm not mistaken, a BI report is being developed in order to help calculating the depreciated value for non-fixed asset equipment. But as of today, we are making use of an Excel tool that complies with the liquidation manual to provide with a depreciated value for non-fixed asset equipment. And we will also show to you how to use that Excel tool to comply with the liquidation manual and the depreciation scales provided in that liquidation manual. All right. Okay. And for expendable property, the ones, so for materials that don't have an equipment item, right? Normally those that once you issue out, you don't track those materials anymore in the system. If we are writing off a set of expendable materials, we will consider as depreciated value the moving average price at the time of the write-off submission. And we will also show to you how to retrieve the MAP, the moving average price, from the system. Okay. So, okay, I've seen that we have some questions already in the chat. Okay. So we have questions regarding the grouping. Okay, how to group if we want to group writing off several expendable materials into one notification, or even several non-fixed asset equipment into one notification. So remember that from what we are discussing now, everything will be based on the delegation of authority. So if all your items that you want to write off are under, for example, under the designated authority, because all of them are under 3,000, the depreciated value is under 3,000, you can group them into the same notification because all of them will require the same level of approval. So you have to start thinking about the depreciated value of the different items you want to write off. And then if all of them belong to the same category, you can use the same notification to initiate a write-off for those materials. Okay. All right. Okay. And a little bit more information about the write-off of expendable property. Okay. Normally the write-off cases for expendable property come from the counting and controlling process, and we will also discuss a little bit the different steps of this counting and controlling process, and where in that process we shall initiate the write-off case. But the important thing here is that you shouldn't be initiating a write-off case always, regardless of the value, because, for example, maybe you found some expendables missing, but they are only valued $5. Okay, so you shouldn't be initiating a write-off case for these low value differences. And in the warehouse manual, okay, there are some policy on that. So a write-off case for expendable property should only be initiated when, okay, when the discrepancy exceeds 2%, right, of what we have in stock, or when the discrepancy is above $250. Okay, so as per the centralized warehouse operation manual, if some expendables have been found missing, a write-off case should only be initiated if the discrepancy exceeds 2% of our holdings for a specific material, or if the difference is above $250. Okay, so that's important. So if we are only talking about small value difference, a write-off case shouldn't be initiated in that case, and we could clear that difference without needing a write-off notification. Okay.
Leandro, do you
Yeah.
hear me? It's Kirill?
Yes. Yeah.
Just to note, I see a question from Ildefonse.
Yeah.
It relates to categorization of write-off cases based on the right of reason. And it's true that in the previous delegation of authority, items that were written off due to normal wear and tear did not require any LPSB or HPSB approval, irrespective of value. This provision, however, is no longer in place. In the revised delegation of authority, the sole criteria for categorization is the depreciated value, with the only exception of the disposal method, where for exceptional and normal disposal methods. So the right of reason is no longer a criteria for categorization.
All right. Thank you very much, Kirill. So thank you, but it's a little bit difficult for me to be reading the question. So thank you very much for providing some answers and some clearance on that. Okay. So is that clear, Ildefonse? I hope it is. Yeah. Thank you, Ildefonse. And we also have a comment from Rafael regarding the valuation type. Okay. So remember that from the stock point of view, and also from the inventory point of view, equipment and some other expendable materials are split valuated, right? So in the stock you have the items that are new, and also the items that are used, right, that appear as old. And from the inventory point of view, old equipment, the ones that were already issued out and then returned to stock, or they are already assigned and installed, have zero value. Okay, but if you want to, for example, you want to write off an equipment that is already installed and being used by a staff member, if you want to write off, the depreciated value, okay, will still be calculated with the Excel tool, and even if it's already in use, it will still have a depreciated value. So remember that equipment items will always have a value. So maybe you can confirm that, Kirill, Cash. So even if we want to write off used equipment, that equipment will always have a value that will have to be used as depreciated value when categorizing a write-off case.
Right. So non-serialized materials are not split valuated.
Yeah.
So a cable of wire will always have some value.
Mm-hmm.
And just to confirm the point you made, if during counting in the warehouse you come across let's say laptops and one less laptop, even if that laptop you discover is zero value in terms of the inventory value, right? So it was issued and returned to stock at zero value. You can still use the purchase value that's in the equipment record to calculate the operational depreciation.
Yeah. Thank you, Cash. So even if the used equipment item appears in your stock as zero value, that will still have a value as a depreciated value that needs to be used when initiating the write-off case, and that is used to categorize the write-off notification. All right. Thank you. We have another question from Ikram regarding spendables. So I think it relates also to the comment that Cass was also mentioning. Okay, so most of the spendables will be not split valuated. Okay, but if they are not split valuated and we issue out the spendables, then if they are not used, they can return back to stock as new. Okay, and then if we want to initiate a right-of case for those expendable property, the depreciated value for expendable property, as mentioned here, will be always the moving average price for that spendable material in that plant. Okay, so we consider always the moving average price as depreciated value when we are talking about writing off expendable materials. Okay, so the MAP at the plant level would be the criteria used to calculate the depreciated value for all the expendable properties. Okay. All right. So let's move ahead. Okay. So if we want to check the depreciated value, the first thing we need to have clear is what kind of item we are talking about, right? So we need to differentiate if we are talking about spendables, if we are talking about equipment, or if we are talking about fixed assets. All right. So that's why we have created the following slide that will help you or will provide you with the different transactions to check the type of item that to understand the type of item that you want to initiate the right of case for. Okay, so this slide will help you to analyze what kind of item you are gonna initiate the right of case for. So you have this T code, this MM03, that you can use to check if a material is serialized or not, and that will help you to understand if the material is, if we are talking about spendable materials, or if on the other side we are talking about fixed asset or non-fixed asset equipment. So by using this MM03 T code, right, and indicating the product ID, the material number or the product ID, you will be able to see by selecting your plant, right, by selecting your plant. For example, in here we have selected CD10 as the plant for example, MONUSCO. You will be able to see if the material is serialized or not. So in the serial number profile, in this field, in the serial number profile, you will be able to see if the equipment is expendable. So if this field is empty, right, if you don't see any serial number profile in here, it means that the material is expendable. Otherwise, if you can see here the serial number profile, that will mean that the material relates to a fixed asset or a non-fixed asset equipment item. So by using the MM03, you can understand if the material refers to fixed asset, to serialized material or to expendable materials. Okay. Then, by using IE03, and for that you will need to have the equipment number. By using the IE03, that is the T code you were using to display the equipment master record and also to update the equipment master record by using IE02. If you indicate here the equipment number, sorry, in this case it's not the product ID but the equipment number, you will see if the equipment has an asset master record related to it. So in the organization tab, check if the asset field is populated. If it's empty, the equipment relates to a non-fixed asset. If you see there the number, that number is the fixed asset master record number. Okay, so by using IE03 and going to the organization tab, you can understand if the item belongs to or if it's related to a fixed asset material. Okay. All right. So let me also, So Rafael, I'm gonna also do you a panelist in case you want to add something from the inventory point of view. Okay. So right now, Rafael, you are unmuted in case you want to add anything that could be helpful for the attendees. Okay, Rafael, thank you. All right. So both MM03 and IE03 will help you to understand the type of item that you are going to be initiating the write-off for. Okay. And in this slide, we are going to be talking about how to calculate the depreciated value for fixed assets. So if you want to initiate a write-off for a fixed asset, okay, for sure, this write-off will require an individual notification, but you still need to calculate the depreciated value in order to update the notification with the proper write-off case, in order to indicate if that notification will be approved by the designated authority or if it will go to LPSB or HPSB. And for that, you need to calculate the depreciated value of the fixed asset master record. And how would you do that? How would you calculate the depreciated value for a fixed asset? For that, you will need to have the fixed asset master record, right? And you will, if you have only the equipment number, you will go to the equipment number and get the fixed asset number. We will show to you that in the system how to do that. And once you have the fixed asset number, you can use the AS03 to go into the fixed asset module in the system, and you will use the fixed asset number. Okay, you will click on the asset values button, right, available in the fixed asset master record. So in here, you can see that this number refers to the fixed asset master record, and there is a button that is used to calculate the depreciated values. And you will find a button to calculate the net book value for that fixed asset master record. Okay, so this is the calculate net book value for the fixed asset. We will show to you that in the system later on. And you will be able to indicate for which day you want to calculate the depreciated value. You will have the button to initiate the calculation, and once you click on calculate and you have populated the asset value date, the system will display to you the depreciated value for that fixed asset master record in that date, all right, based on the straight line depreciation scheme as per IPSAS. Okay, so you will use that T-code and that those steps in order to calculate the depreciated value for that fixed asset that will appear under the net book value for that fixed asset master record. Okay. Okay. So Ildefonso, you need to calculate. So your question about do you have to calculate the depreciated value? Otherwise, you will not, without calculating this depreciated value, you will not be able to categorize the notification. So if you don't know the depreciated value for a fixed asset or the depreciated value for a non-fixed asset equipment, you will not be able to classify the notification. You will not be able to understand if that notification should be reviewed by the designated authority or it has to be reviewed by the LPSB or HPSB. Okay, so as a notification user or even as a disposal planner, you need to understand how to calculate the depreciated value in order to categorize properly the notification. That's why we are showing to you how to calculate depreciated values. So this slide relates to fixed asset, and later on we are going to show to you how to do the same for non-fixed asset equipment and the same for expendables. Okay. So this is the way to do that in the system for fixed asset. So let me try to do that in the system. I'm gonna try to connect to Umoja. When asking questions, please address the question to all the panelists. So I'm seeing that some of you are addressing the question only to me. So please, when using the chat, address the question to all the panelists, okay, so that Saida can handle the questions. So Sina, if you can, please forward the question to all the panelists. All right. Oh, it seems it's frozen. Okay, so let me try a little bit more. Instructor 03. Okay, it's back. All right. So I'm gonna. The first T code I showed to you was MM03. Okay, and let's say with this T code, the MM03, the information you will need to enter is the product ID, right? The material number. So not the equipment number. So with this T code, you can understand if material is serialized or not. So in this case, we are talking about this product ID. Normally, all the ones starting with 21, all the product ID starting with 21 relate to fixed asset material, right? So that's always true, almost always true, right? So if you see a product ID that starts with 21, that product ID relates to fixed asset, okay? But from here, by using MM03 and by using the general plant data storage 2, okay, you will populate your plant. So in our example, we are going to use MONUSCO. And in the serial number profile, we will see that that material, at least we understand that is serialized. Okay. All right. Then, if you have the equipment number, right, you can use the IE03, and with that equipment number, if you have the equipment number, let's say that is 11081214. Let's say that corresponds to an equipment. If we want to check if that equipment has a related fixed asset, we need to go to the org tab. So in here, if you have a number in the asset field, it means that this equipment has a related fixed asset master record. Okay. So this fixed asset master record number is the one you can use with the AS03 T code, or we can just double click in this number, and the system will automatically drive us to the AS03 master record. So I'm going to just double click on this number, and we will see that automatically the system drive me to the AS03 T code. So right now, what I'm displaying the asset master data, right? So this is the asset, the fixed asset master record. This is the fixed asset number, okay? And what I'm gonna use is the asset values in order to calculate the depreciated value for that item, okay? So in here, I'm seeing the fixed asset master record. I'm going to click on the asset values. All right. We can see here the fixed asset. Sorry, the initial amount. So the fixed asset master record was initiated with an amount of 6,000, and we can see that every month in the posted values, we can see that every month the fixed asset master record is depreciated with $83.33, right? So every month the fixed asset gets depreciated $83.33, and we can use in the planned values, we can use the calculate net book value button, right? We can use the calculate net book value to indicate here the date the right of case was initiated, right? In order to calculate the depreciated value. So if we want to initiate the right of case as of today, we can put today's date and use the calculate button, and the system will indicate here the depreciated value for that fixed asset master record for this date, okay? If we want to initiate the right of case, for example, instead of in September, in October, we can change the date here, and we will see when clicking the calculate that the depreciated value will be lower, right? It will be 5,000. So because the system it's depreciating the fixed asset for this particular case $83 each month, okay? We can also use that one in the past, right? So if we wanted to initiate the right of case in August, the value of that write-off of that fixed asset will be higher, right? So it will be higher. So every month the fixed asset gets depreciated the same fixed amount. Okay. So that is the way we calculate the fixed assets, the depreciated value for fixed asset. Arsim is asking about how to calculate the depreciated value for AUCs and infrastructure. Okay, I'll need to check that one. I don't know if maybe Kirill or Cass can say something more about the AUC and how to calculate the depreciated value for an asset under construction. Otherwise, I'll need to look in more detail if that same process will also apply for AUC. Okay, Arsim? I'll need to check with my colleagues that are more involved in the AUC process.
So I'm looking at Kirill, who's sitting about 20 feet away from me, and we're trying to coordinate a response. We can respond in writing, but briefly, assets under construction don't depreciate until they're capitalized. But we can respond in writing.
All right, thank you, Cass. So basically, I mean, the fixed asset gets capitalized, or if we are talking here about materials, gets capitalized at the moment of receipt, right? For AUC, we'll have to make that in writing to make clear when it gets capitalized and when so, how we calculate the depreciated value for this AUC fixed asset. All right, so at this point, I hope it's clear how you as a disposal planner and how you as a notification user, how you can calculate the depreciated value for a fixed asset. You can make use of the calculate net value and in the fixed asset master record. So you will use the AS03, indicate the asset number, use the asset values button, and in there use the calculate net book value for indicate the date when the write-off case is initiated. You can put that in the future or in the past. Let's put November, and the system will automatically calculate the depreciated value for that particular date. All right. So this is how we will do it for fixed asset. Let's change and let's see how we can do that for a non-fixed asset equipment. So let's say that we want to write off an equipment item, but in this case, it's not a fixed asset. It's an equipment that doesn't comply with the rules or with the thresholds to be considered a fixed asset. So in that case, as per the liquidation manual, the depreciated value is calculated from the acquisition date. Okay. The first year depreciation is calculated immediately, right? So on day one after the acquisition date, the equipment item will get depreciated the entire amount for the first year. So for fixed asset, the depreciation was calculated on a monthly basis. For non-fixed asset equipment, the depreciated value is calculated year by year, right? So every year, we consider that the non-fixed asset equipment is depreciated. Differently, as compared to fixed asset, there is no maximum life expectancy for non-fixed asset equipment. Therefore, the depreciated value for non-fixed asset equipment will never reach zero value. So for fixed asset, after the estimated useful life, the fixed asset value will be zero. But for non-fixed asset, there is no maximum life expectancy, and therefore the depreciated value will be reaching zero, but it will never be zero completely, even though we are calculating the depreciated value for, let's say, for a laptop that is 20 years old. Okay, so from the liquidation manual point of view, the depreciated value will never reach zero. So how can we check the depreciated value for non-fixed asset? For that purpose, we will use the IE03 to check for the details available in the equipment master record. And in particular, we will pay attention to the material group that appears as object type in the equipment master record that will be used to calculate the depreciated value. We will have a look at the acquisition value, right? And we will also have a look at the acquisition year. So in the equipment master record, you will have the three different elements that you will need to use in the Excel tool. So you have the material group, the acquisition value, and the acquisition date. All right. Yeah.
If I could just jump in.
Sure.
Also, IH08 has this information. in case you have to run the report from any. I just want to sort of.
Yes, thank you, Cass. Yeah, so you can retrieve it equipment by equipment by using IE03, or as Cass is mentioning with the report, right, with the IH08, you can do the same for several equipment, right? So you can run a report and get the material group, acquisition value, and acquisition date for several equipment. Okay. I think the audio is somehow not clear for some participants, and some participants didn't get the point of the equipment not reaching zero value. Okay, we will repeat that while reviewing the Excel tool for calculating the operational depreciation scales for non-fixed asset. Okay, but basically the differently to fixed asset, the non-fixed asset equipment will never reach zero value. So even if we are calculating the depreciated value for 20 years old laptop, that one will never be zero, regardless if the equipment is really old or not, right? For fixed asset, after the expected useful life, fixed asset have zero value as depreciated value, but it's not the same for non-fixed asset equipment. So these three fields, material group, acquisition value, and acquisition year, will be used in the Excel tool. So the Excel tool we will also send to you by email so that you can use it. I'm sure that most of you already have it available. And in that Excel tool is where you will have to populate those fields. Okay, so you will use the fields retrieved from I03 or from IH08, and you will populate the material group. You will also populate the acquisition value, acquisition year, and the depreciation year, the year for which you want to initiate the right of case on. Okay, and for that purpose, you will use the tab, the data entry tab. Okay, so once you have populated these fields, the Excel tool will automatically calculate the depreciated value, right, based on the information you have provided. So you will have the columns in orange to populate data, and then the columns in blue is where the tool, the Excel tool, will prompt you with the depreciated value in the depreciated value column, right? Okay. All right. So let's see how we can do that in the system. All right. So we were mentioning before how to calculate the depreciated value for an asset. Let's change the equipment master record, and now let's open an equipment that is not, sorry, we can use IE03, and let's put an equipment, right? So this is an equipment that if we go to the organization tab, we can see that there is no asset master record linked to it. So in this case, we are talking about an equipment, in this case it's a laptop, that is not a fixed asset. So if we want to calculate the depreciated value for this particular laptop, we need to go into the General tab, and especially we need to take into account these fields. We need to consider the object type field, right, that will tell you the type of equipment. In this case, it's a notebook computer. We need to consider the acquisition value, right? This value comes from the purchase order, and also the acquisition date, also coming from the purchase order, okay, or from the good receipt. So these fields are automatically populated at the moment of the equipment master record is created in the system. So these fields are going to be the ones that we will use in the operational depreciation scales Excel tool. So in this tool, this is the tool that we were mentioning before in the presentation. We need to go to the data entry tab, and we need to populate these four columns, especially this material group, the technical object type. We need to fill it in object type from the equipment master record. So we need to populate here the number, and you will see that automatically the tool will automatically reference the proper operational depreciation scale. So in this case, we are talking about EDP support equipment, right? As acquisition value, we'll put 1,500, right, coming from the equipment master record. The acquisition year is 2016, and the depreciation year refers to the date when the operational depreciation has to be calculated, or in other words, when we want to initiate the write-off case. So if we want to initiate the write-off case this year, 2018, we will populate 2018 as depreciation year, and we will see that in the blue columns, the system will automatically calculate 720 as the depreciated value, right? So the laptop was purchased for 1,500. After 2 years, the depreciated value for that laptop is 720. Okay, and that, as we mentioned before, that regardless if the laptop was used before or if it's a brand new laptop. So regardless if we are talking about an equipment that is new or old. So in here, right, the split valuation. So the split valuation, in this case, we are talking about old equipment, right? So as Rafael was mentioning before, from the stock point of view, from the operational valuation of stock, from that point of view, in the system that has 0 value. But if we initiate a case for that particular equipment, the depreciated value, the one we need to calculate in order to classify the notification, will be 720, because after 2 years, the depreciated value is going to be that one. If we change the depreciation year and we put 2025, right, as depreciation year, we want to see the value of that item in 7 years. Okay, we will see that the equipment will still have a value, a lower value, but still have a value. If we calculate the same in 2040, we'll see that the laptop will still have a value, $20. That's what we meant. So there is no expected maximum useful life. So even though you calculate the depreciated value far in the future, you will see that there is still a depreciated value for that non-fixed asset.
I should point out that this spreadsheet will calculate up to 50 years. So if you try and say what the depreciation year is in the year 3000, it'll fail.
All right. Thank you, Cass. So after 50 years, yeah, okay. But there is no, as in the fixed asset master record, there is no expected maximum expected useful life. So there will be always a remaining depreciated value in the non-fixed asset equipment. Okay. All right. So I hope it's clear how to calculate the depreciated value. So if you are trying to include several equipment items into the same notification, you will need to calculate the depreciated value for each non-fixed asset equipment to see if all of them should be classified as per the same based on the depreciated value. Okay, that's why you need to calculate the depreciated value also for non-fixed asset equipment. Okay. So last case, expendables. So how do we calculate the depreciated value for expendables? And we said that for expendables, the depreciated value is based on the moving average price at the time of right of submission. So how do we calculate the moving average price for expendables? For that purpose, we have the MM60, right? The MM60 T-code is where by indicating the material number and the plant, because remember that the moving average price is different for each material in each plant. That's why we need to indicate both the material number or product ID and the plant to calculate the moving average price of that expendable material in your plant. So by indicating the material and the plant, the system will display the moving average price for that material in your plant. So under the price column, you will see that the system is displaying the current moving average price for that material in your plant. Okay, and this price, this moving average price, is the one you need to use as depreciated value when classifying the notification. Okay, to understand if it's below 3,000, if it's between 3,000 and 25,000, or if it's above 25,000. Okay, that will be the unit price. So in this case, we are talking about meal rations, right? So each ration, it's priced $72. So if you want to write off 10 different ones, you have to multiply, right? So that will be the moving average price for each unit. So each unit of that material is valued that amount. Okay? All right, so how do we do that in the system? As we said, we use MM60 T-code. We indicate the product ID and the plant, right? And from there, we run it. Okay. We remove this checkbox. Okay. All right. 79. Okay. So let's change the material. All right. So normally, as Cass was saying, the spendable materials will never be split valuated. Okay. So in this case, this material, it's split valuated. That's why you can see that for the same material in the same plant, you have new and old, right? And you have the value for old, that is, as Rafael was mentioning, the value for the old items are always 0, right? And you have the value for new, that in this case, each unit is valued as $1. So each, in this case, we are talking about spare parts, right? So it's the spare part for a vehicle, right? So it's valued $1, and this material we can check if it's expendable, right? If it's serialized or not. And we said from the very beginning we could check by using MM03 if the material it's serialized or not. We said that could be checked in the plant data. We put the serial number, sorry, the plant, and from there we could see that this material is non-serialized. So it's non-serialized, it's expendable, and but even though it's not is expendable, it's still split valuated. Okay. So by using MM60, you can check the moving average price for that material. Okay. All right. Okay. So, Cass, do you want to say anything about the expendables non-serialized? Because I agree with you. I mean, most of the expendables will be non-split valuated, right? But
yeah, I suppose I was just simply wrong. There might be a reason to anyway. For example, when we cannibalize, don't we have to bring them back at zero? They're not technically new.
Yeah,
so,
when we cannibalize and we are sending back to stock, normally it should come as zero value, right? Because they are old, they are not brand new, right? But then the open point here will be which value we need to consider as depreciated value, because we can have different values here. So if we go to the, for example, to the presentation, if we are talking about spendables that are still split valuated, right? Which price should we consider as depreciated value? Should we consider the one related to the new, or the average one? Because I don't think that we should consider zero as if we are writing off used spendable, or if we are writing off a new spendable. So this is something that maybe we can confirm later on. Which,
well, I don't know. Initially, my suggestion is to do whatever is most accurate for the situation. So if you happen to know that that particular equipment falls under the $34 price, then use that. But look, MB52 will give you the MAP at the material level. I think that that's
because this 34 is the average, because you can have much more equipment that are old than new, right? That's why this is the average. This 34 is kind of the average, right? Because you have maybe 1,000 stock of that material, but maybe only 10 of them are new and the rest are old, right? So if you kind of average all the different items, the average will be 34, because you have a lot that are old.
Well, can we, maybe if we use this as an example and check what the system would show as the moving average price in MB52.
Okay, so this is something we can confirm later on, okay? With the in the exceptional case of expendables that are split valuated, which should be the value that we should consider as depreciated value.
Leandro, it's Kirill.
Yes, Kirill.
A suggestion from my side. Even if the material is split valuated and the items in stock are old and valued at zero value, for the purposes of write-off, we should use the best available cost estimate. If we have the same material as new, we use that price. Or if you don't, we can use any purchase reference price, but simply we cannot use zero for the purposes of categorizing the write-off.
Okay, thank you, Kirill. So we should always choose the best price, right, from the UN point of view. So if we have the price for the new, we will use that one. Otherwise, I mean, if we have purchased that material in the past, we should always have the moving average price appear in the system. Otherwise, we could check for past POs from a comparable plant or something like that, right? So we should, but maybe we can put that in writing to make it clear to the missions. Thank you, Kirill. All right, so this is how we calculate the depreciated value for spendables, basically based on the moving average price for that material in the plant. Okay. All right. So with this slide, we somehow close the part of the delegation of authority. Okay. And the exercise that we will submit to you will be based basically on the DOA. So we will ask you to calculate the depreciated value for a bunch of equipment to be able to group the different equipment based on the depreciated value. So we will be asking you to calculate, to use the fixed asset master record to calculate depreciated value, to use the Excel tool to calculate the depreciated value for non-fixed assets, and also to calculate the MAP for spendables. And we want, besides the DOA, we want to also discuss a little bit about the process for return items to stock. Okay. Let's see if we can close some of the questions we have in the chat regarding the DOA. Okay, so Mustafa is asking about the why the spendables are in block stock. So you can, even though the spendables are in block stock, you can still calculate the MAP, right? So it doesn't matter if the spendables are in block stock or in unrestricted status, you can still calculate the moving average price to initiate the right of case, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. Yeah. So regardless of the stock status, you can always check the moving average price for that particular material. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the return to stock process. And remember, the return to stock process, it can be part of the right of case. So in some cases, you'll need to return an item back to stock to proceed with the write-off. In case in your mission you want to manage the material in the warehouse and to keep all the materials that are in the process of write-off together in the disposal area. This is the steps you could add in your write-off notification task list in order to complete the return to stock process. Okay, so remember that the return to stock process is initiated by the inventory user by creating a reservation, and here you have the T code, right? This long one, this MB21. And in the reservation document, you should all be familiar with the reservation document. Okay, we specify the movement type that for most of the return to stock is going to be related for write-off cases to return items that are already used, right? So this Sept 01 will be the most common movement type used to return items to stock because of a write-off case. So that will return an equipment item that has been already used. Okay. Normally, the equipment items will be returned as old, okay, because they have already been used. In the text, we should be referencing the write-off notification number in the text for the reservation document. We will specify the quantity and the type of material that we want to return to stock. At this stage, we don't indicate the serial number. We just indicate the material and the quantity and the date for which we want to process the return to stock. Okay, so that will be the different fields to create a reservation. Okay, and the fund and fund center, that will be basically, the return to stock should include the storage location, okay, for where we want to return the items back to stock. Okay, so sorry about these fields. Instead of the fund center, it should say the storage location, and the storage location will automatically derive the fund center. Okay, I should amend that one. Sorry about that. This reservation will have to be approved by the inventory senior user by using the work center, right? They will see in their work center the reservations to be approved, and with that reservation approved, the inventory user will post MIGO. In the MIGO, in the good receipt material document, is where they will reference the reservation document that will copy all the different data into the MIGO transaction. They will specify the serial number of the equipment that needs to be returned to stock. And after the good receipt has been posted, then the warehouse processes can continue in order to put those materials in the right place in the warehouse. So in the warehouse, they will be able to put away the equipment into the proper destination bin. And remember, for the warehouse, there is specific storage type or storage area that is dedicated in your warehouse to be used for disposal. So in all the warehouses, you should have a disposal area to group all the different equipment that are in the process of write-off. Okay, so this TO for put away that is initiated with the LD06 can then be confirmed by the warehouse user by confirming this TO for put away. Okay, this is just a refresh from the inventory and warehouse processes. Okay, but we have included it here because it can relate to the write-off cases. So in many occasions, you should bring your equipment back to stock to treat them separately as part of the write-off case. Okay, so in here you have the steps and the roles involved in bringing your equipment back to stock. And you could, as a disposal planner, if you want also to track those tasks in your notification, you could add those steps in your task list in your notification. Okay. And lastly, some thoughts about the relation between write-off and the physical count process in the warehouse. Okay, and this basically relates to mainly spendables, but also to serialized equipment. Okay, remember that physical count in the warehouse is normally triggered by a regular schedule, right? So in the warehouse, there are regular counting physical count processes. Okay. So these physical counts in the warehouse relates to all types of materials. So the physical count can involve spendables, equipment, and fixed assets, and it's a separate process compared to the physical verification, even if it has some common points. Okay, but the physical count, think about it as more a warehouse-related process to align the physical inventory with the inventory appearing in the warehouse module in Umoja. So as part of this physical count, the differences that have been identified as part of this physical count, if there is any difference, will have to be cleared in a two-step process. So the difference will have to be first cleared in the warehouse and secondly in the inventory management module. Okay, so there will be two steps clearance process, and it's important to remember that the bins that are being counted remain blocked until the differences are cleared in the warehouse. So in these two steps clearance process, the bins remain blocked, meaning that you cannot perform any put away or any picking in the bins that are being counted. Okay, so in here you have the different steps. So the count is initiated. Okay, and in here the last two steps is what we mean by the clear steps, the clearing steps. So the differences, if any, have to be cleared by the property control user, first in the warehouse and second in the inventory management module. And the bins being counted remain blocked the bins remain blocked until the differences are cleared in the warehouse. Okay, so in this two-step process, once we clear the difference in the warehouse, the bins are released back again. Okay, so we can clear the difference in the warehouse and then continue working with the bins, waiting for the differences to be cleared in the inventory management module. Okay. All right. So a write-off notification. So this counting and controlling process has some connection steps with the write-off, right? Because if there are differences, a write-off notification might be needed, right, to clear those differences. So a write-off notification, it's needed after clearing differences in the warehouse. Always, if we are talking about an equipment item, or if the difference relates to a fixed asset. So if the difference is related to an equipment or a fixed asset, we should always trigger that as a write-off case by using a notification, right? So if we want to initiate the write-off case for an equipment or a fixed asset after the counting and controlling process, we always have to do it by using a write-off notification. If the difference relates to expendables, remember what we mentioned before about the thresholds coming from the warehouse manual. Okay, so if we are talking about expendables, if the difference is above 2% or above $250, then also write-off notification is needed to get the write-off approval. Okay, if it's below those thresholds, then we can clear the difference without the need of a write-off notification. Okay, and the clear differences in inventory management, the ones that will really clear the differences from the inventory management point of view, removing that inventory from the inventory management module, has to be performed before the write-off case has been approved, either by the designated authority, by LPSB, or by HPSB, depending on the depreciated value, right? So for those differences, if we need to initiate a write-off case, we will need to calculate the depreciated value for the items that are lost, okay? And for that case, we will need to initiate or create a notification based on the depreciated values that we showed before, okay? All right. So sorry for taking a little bit more of your time. So it was a little longer session. I think that you will have a lot of questions. Remember that you can address the questions via email, and we'll try to get an answer and share all the questions with all of you. And remember also that we are planning a Q&A session for next week, where you can go through your open points and your concerns regarding the different processes and things that we have been reviewing. Okay. Okay. So this was the different topics that we wanted to go through today. It was mainly the DOA, but we also covered a little bit the return to stock and the the physical count in the warehouse. We had a question regarding the return to stock, regarding if a notification is needed. So I know that from where this question is coming from, right? Normally, for any return to stock, a notification is needed. But in this context, we are talking about a return to stock that is related to a right of case, right? And the right of case has already a notification raised for that. So you could include as a notification related to the return to stock, you could include the right of notification. Okay. All right. Any other comments, questions from anybody? I don't know if you can intervene for sure. Cass, Kirill, Rafael, you can do it from your end. I don't know if participants can do it.
Intervene and
yeah, I mean, if you want to say something, anything to close the session, or you want to amend anything that we said. Okay.
No, yeah, I think it's going fairly well. Of course, our colleagues receiving the training will be the judge of that. Okay. Any open questions we can address afterwards?
Yeah. So we have a bunch of questions coming through the chat, so we'll make sure that we write all of them down, and we try to provide a written answer. So thank you. We will open the session 5 minutes more open for you to write anything in the chat in case you want to ask for additional questions. And then we'll try to answer each of them and share the answers and questions with all of you. Okay. So thank you very much for attending, and remember, we have an additional session this Thursday. Thank you very much.
Thank you.